Welcome to What Lies Ahead. I'm your host, Chris Raffini, lead singer of the Long Island band Overthrow. On my podcast, I explore everything related to the hardcore scene through the eyes of artists, promoters, and record labels. As always, please like or subscribe on all social media platforms. For more information and updates, check out our Instagram page at whatliesahead_podcast and find us on Facebook by searching What Lies Ahead. Now, on to the show. On this episode, I'm speaking with the guitarist vocalist Shore from the New York band Scarboro. The trio formed in 2012 and is known for a fast, aggressive punk sound. They have a new album coming out April 17th, and we're going to talk about the band's history, the new record, and what to expect in the future. Shore, thanks for coming on, man. What's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. Excited to have you guys on. Been listening to you guys for a little while. Psyched that you have a new record coming out. And at about the time of this release, it should be coming out in a few weeks, give or take a month or a few weeks. And you'll probably have some singles in between that as well. So, which is cool. We'll get to talk about that. And I know you sent me a bunch of the track list, which we'll get into in a little bit regarding the new record. But I guess let's talk about you. And we were talking prior to this a little bit, and I was telling you, I love the sound of your band. It's super catchy, it's melodic, it's fast, it's aggressive, everything that's supposed to be of New York punk, but with your own style, which is really, really good. And it's super catchy too, by the way. But let's start with you. Where was your first interest in music? Your first show, if you remember, what made you want to start the band?
Ooh. Yeah, I grew up listening to, I was born in the 80s, so I was, grew up in the 90s, really. That's sort of where like the musical formation happens. But like, punk was my go-to from day one. High school played around a bit, in college I was definitely playing in a band, and then I moved back to New York. I lived in DC for a little bit. And became a parent. So music took sort of a back burner. So it's like about 2012 when an old buddy of mine from college that lived in New York at the time, wanted to start a little project, which I kind of consider the sort of proto Scarboro. So it was just kind of just fucking around, just playing around town, and hadn't really kind of landed on where we are here. So we had a couple of lineup changes as the years moved on. Even though the band technically started in 2012, for me, like this version of Scarboro, it really comes to be around 2014, when we had put out the Safe Word is Yes EP. And that's when Jack joined the band on bass. And so we've moved through drummers over the years, but Jack and I have really been kind of the mainstay of the band since 2014. And that's when we really kind of shifted gears and started doing it more professionally, and really wanted to invest a lot of time in that. And so, we plugged away. We put out Here Comes the Hangover, followed that up with Wolves on the Radio EP, which we had done on WTF Records at Rotterdam rather. So that was really dope. And then we took a little bit of a break around the pandemic stuff. I jumped mistakenly back into the political world, which is sort of what I was doing outside of the band.
Mm-hmm.
And that took up some time, which put us into the hiatus. And then, I walked away from all that mess a couple of years ago and just decided, you know what, like, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to do Scarborough full time. And that's where the birth of the new record came out.
That's awesome, man. Which I want to we'll talk about that because obviously, Here Comes the Hangover, and then you have obviously your EPs and stuff like that. Now, when there was that little break that you took, for a little while, and then you guys came back. Did you, when you came back, come back with the intention of writing this new record? Did you have some like riffs and music or hooks or ideas laying around prior to even thinking the band was going to come back, or just kind of you came back and then it just all kind of came into fruition?
So it's a little bit of both. So like I always had we put out two singles. Once we sort of came out of hiatus, Liminal Space and the New Normal, those are kind of like lying around. But the new record pretty much got written all in one period right after that. There had been some ideas floating around, a couple of like lines here or there, but nothing had been fully formed. My songwriting style is kind of weird. Like it just kind of happens, like I'll be doodling around. Like I can't set out to like try and write a song, like Everything kind of just comes from sort of the feeling, and the inspiration happens in a moment. So like the skeletons end up being shot out in, anywhere between like 15-30 minutes. Then I'll take that to the band with, kind of what the structure is going to be, and then we fill in the rest from there. So yeah, that's kind of how this all happened. Probably I would say over a 6 to 7 month period, the whole record pretty much came together, except for Got Soul, which Jack actually wrote the music and the lyrics for, which we'll get into later. But yeah, that one came in almost at the finish line, like while we were still in the studio.
It's cool. So it sounds like what you're saying, like a collaborative process. That was it always the same way when you guys were writing, or is it a little different now, just based on where you guys were at and moving forward with writing this record?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say it's different. I think that this record is probably the most representative and collaborative sort of Scarboro project ever. I mean, we brought in a new drummer when we came back from hiatus, Radica, who joined us in 23. And she's a phenomenal musician. Her background really wasn't in sort of punk or hardcore or any of that stuff, which was interesting. When she introduced herself to us, she was like, "Oh, like I do a lot of jazz stuff," which was not entirely true, but like we had a little bit more of a rock edge to it. But we were like, you know what, like I really wanted to make sure that whatever we did for the new record represented everybody and everybody's talents. And so while I still did the bulk of the lyrics and kind of laying out the rough skeletons of the songs, like we really put in a lot of more work developing them, where I think previously whatever I brought in pretty much stayed that way, unless we had a little tweak or two in the studio. This time around, we spent a lot of more time toying around with the stuff and making sure that it was like really dynamic and interesting and stuff that we really enjoyed. I mean, it was such a fun record to record, even though, it's also one that took us the longest. I mean, I think we recorded it from like February to April of 25. So yeah.
Where'd you record?
Brooklyn Recording Paradise.
Okay, nice. Okay, now have you used that, and have you moved to different studios in the past, or?
Yeah, so mostly we would record out of Studio G for the past two records. Then we did the last two singles with Brian DeMeglio at Brooklyn Recording Paradise, and then yeah, that we decided, let's try giving him the full record. We like the studio. He's a dope engineer, producer, really helpful, and yeah, that's how we ended up there, where we ended up doing the new one.
Okay. Now, with the songs that you have on here, were there any that did not make it, or pretty much everything you recorded is on the album?
No, everything made it. We I think we ended up writing. Oh, well, that's not entirely true, right? Because we ended up writing probably like 17, 18 songs before we went into the studio. But like the ones that weren't going to make it kind of fell off before that process even began. So
Okay.
yeah, like once we went in there, like we had demoed the whole record pretty much as is, before we ended up going in to do the recording probably in like January, I think last year. So yeah, everything is
What are you
final.
looking at? Like 13 songs, if I'm correct, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, yeah. It's 13. Like there's an intro in there, which it makes it technically 14 tracks, but it's part of Midnight Special. So like, but we live in the modern times. People don't have an attention span, and we have to serve the algorithm gods, unfortunately. So we ended up splitting the intro out.
Mhm. Let's get with what's the name of the new record?
The new record is going to be called Hate Season.
AIDS in. Awesome. Okay. So let's start with the first track, Midnight Special. I guess we'll go with, where was the song written in the process of it, the sound, and I guess the lyrical content, which I have in front of me here, I see, but like in terms of what you were looking to talk about with this song.
Yes. So, I've made it no secret that I've struggled with mental health issues over the years. And, that there's this sort of this moment in the middle of the night, like, I also suffer from like terrible insomnia, right? So I'm talking to you
Mm.
today, having woken up at 2 o'clock, gone to bed at 9 in the morning after being up like 19 hours since yesterday. But Midnight Special really is about that sort of this anxiety and slash depression, but mostly this running anxiety that creeps up in the middle of the night and leaves you, feeling like this fucking mess. Like you can't put your brain together in the ensuing days. Thankfully, I've been working on my shit. I have it together. I'm happy to be on the other side of all of that mess. But
Mhm.
that being said, Midnight Special really captures sort of that chaos and that creeping slow momentum of this thing that just like keeps you up at night and literally sort of takes over your brain in those early morning hours.
It's probably something super therapeutic about writing a song like this, right? And being able to play it, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, like, this whole record has been that, I mean, it really captures the all of kind of the stuff that I was going through during that hiatus period where music was in sort of in the back burner. I really wasn't writing, wasn't really listening to anything. It was just caught in sort of like the political world and all the bullshit that entails. And this record is sort of that catharsis. It really is like, originally we were going to call it the healing era, but we thought that it probably was it didn't honor sort of the sound of the record itself, but that is kind of the spirit that it tries to capture is sort of processing all of the 5 years of bullshit and putting it all on vinyl.
nice. And I forgot to mention, as we said, it's going to be on WTF and Sell the Heart Records, right? Obviously, that's going to be releasing that. WTF's Sell the Heart's here, correct, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the Hearts are sort of the lead on this one, and then the old homies at WTF Records are going to be holding it down for on the European side for us.
Awesome. Got distribution there. All right, let's get into the second track. Hope I say this right. Sin Futuro. Did I say that right? I'm not
Yeah,
even close.
yeah, yeah. No, that's
I did
spot
it.
on.
Okay. Good.
Yes. So Sin Futuro. This one I'm gonna blame on Bad Bunny. So I'm not a huge hip hop and reggaeton fan, even though I am half Puerto Rican. But I found myself last year in PR. I was burying my great aunt, and that record had just dropped, and it was just playing everywhere. And I'm half Filipino, half Puerto Rican, which I talk about a little bit in that song. And we're not a political band, right? Like if you listen to any of our old shit, there really isn't a ton of politics. I've always been really good at trying to keep my sort of professional life or whatever at the time and the music separate because I wanted Scarboro to be fun. But we're living in a really tough era, and a lot of crazy shit's going down. And you know, in that milieu, listening to that music, kind of getting in touch with my roots, realizing that I'm descended from two countries essentially that were colonized at one point, and now living in America, being born and raised in New York, and just starting to see some really fucked up shit starting to happen. It really kind of threw the doors open, and I couldn't kind of keep what I wanted to say about what I'm seeing um secret anymore, I guess. And so like I really, it's also the first time I've ever done a bilingual song, which was a lot of fun to do. And it really was about kind of recapturing that roots and sort of witnessing what's going on in the country right now through that lens of being descended from two sort of colonized places, and it's kind of a wake up call. I think that again, I don't want to get like super political. People are going to believe whatever they're going to believe, but I think that like there's no denying that things are changing. They're not changing in a great direction. And we really kind of got to wake up. It doesn't matter what your political leaning is. I don't give a fuck about parties anymore. We really got to kind of come together and figure out what we're going to do about the direction that the world is heading in. If we really want a future for I have three kids, and it's weird. It's really weird. To I have like my son's 19. I have two teenage daughters. And compared to when I was growing up, like their outlook of the future doesn't seem as bright. Like they don't really know, what's in store for them. Hell, I don't even know what's in store for me anymore. So,
Hmm.
so that song captures sort of that frustration, and it really is a kind of a sounding the alarm for folks to, kind of turn off the news and actually pay attention to what's going on. Use your own common sense to recognize that this isn't good. It doesn't matter like you don't have to get into like the specific topics of it because I'm not here to preach to anybody outside of saying like, it's time to wake the fuck up. Like there's no denying that this is not a good direction we're headed in.
No, and it's not preachy at all. But the lyrics, because you gave me the lyrics for the songs, which is great to give context for. So I was actually wondering when you're talking about this, the music's written. Was
Hmm.
this idea to write about in your head, or it just that you heard the music and it just brought out the hook, brought out the chorus of the song? Because it looks towards the end when you're speaking, when you're saying your set, just first bilingual song here, it looks like it's a sing along part. Like you just tell the way you just tell the way it's written here. Was that part just the music that gave you the idea for that, and then you went with the theme of the song?
Yeah, yeah, because like, like I said, the theme was kind of there when I was on that trip in PR, but it didn't really come to fruition until like I started
Music.
doodling with the music. Like when
Right.
like that's also the first single that we're gonna drop later this month from when we're recording. And it just sort of had that little bit of a rhythm to it that's not you know something you find in any of the stuff we were done before or in a lot of the punk rock stuff, period. And it just kind of all clicked, it just felt like it had sort of that like Latin rhythm to it. And you'll hear on the record, like, we really played that out. Like, there's some bombas on there. We did a lot of cool sort of Latino production on it to give it that sort of swing to it.
Cool. Awesome. Let's get to the third one, benzos and coke, which it's probably an idea what that's about. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, so like I said, made no secret about is struggling with mental illness stuff. Jack and I have unfortunately, you know, in the past fell into some substance use situations. For on my end, was having a really shit psychiatrist who never warned me about medications I was being put on, and then I turn around, and find out like, oh, like now I'm hooked on benzos, not even realizing it because
Mhm.
for something that you're supposed to take for 2 weeks, it was 2 years
Wow.
of daily dose, and it doesn't matter how little it is, like to find out, oh, if you get off of this, if you just stop cold turkey, it can kill you or give you, but it had effects, like it really bled into my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but like, that's part of what affected the sort of hiatus we were on. Like, I just couldn't write. I couldn't access that part of myself, and I had no idea why. And so like benzos and coke, if it wasn't for our friends and families, for Jack and I respectively, like having our backs and being there for us and like never giving up on us and helping guiding us out of the messes we were in. That song's a celebration of that. It's really, I like to think of it as a dedication to the people in our lives that help get us out of those dark spots, because it certainly wasn't serving us. And it wasn't serving the band, but like, now we get to be, knock on wood, lucky enough to be on the other side of that shit,
Right.
um, and be able to celebrate it.
Awesome. Awesome. It sounds good. And that's what, again, these things are probably super helpful, right? As you're, as you said, you're going through all these things. It's helpful having this. That's the best part of it. Doing the band again, for sure, right?
Yeah, a thousand
Um,
percent.
fourth song, Save Yourself.
Yeah, so that one's a real personal one. I wrote that one for my daughter because unfortunately, our middle child, who's happens to be my daughter, obviously. But
Mm.
she unfortunately inherited dad's bum brain, and had her own mental health struggles, and at one point it ended up really matching up with sort of my own uh, you know, dip into the darkness, which made it kind of tough to be there as a dad. I mean, you try to be there. You think you're being supportive, but it's really hard to kind of see and kind of be the dad that you wanted to be when you yourself are struggling with it. So that really kind of comes out like in the hook of it, where this was sort of part apology, part recognition, and part saying, hey, like I've always believed that you're going to be able to get yourself out of this. Like I see you, I've always seen you, but I was going through it too, and I can empathize and sympathize with that. So I wrestled with whether or not like I was going to put that one out there or
Mm.
even be able to talk about it, because it is kind of a deeply personal one. I also think that it's something that anyone that can listen to it can relate to. As personal as
Yeah.
this record may be, there's stuff there that I think folks can relate to. But yeah, that was really the main thrust behind that one. Is just trying to get that message out to my daughter as widely as possible.
The same thing. You had the idea for this one, and then the music you heard, and then you were able to kind of formulate. I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you. So, it sounds like you had a bunch of different ideas. Do you write them down or put in your notes in your phone, like your iPhone? Like just what I'm doing, like kind of the first four songs we talked about. Like these are kind of themes I, I want to write about until you hear the music, and then it comes out, or it's just you remember that you kind of hold it on the back burner, and then when the song comes, it just comes back out again.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the second one, right? So it's like I go through all these things. I have all these ideas. I never think about, oh, this is going to make a good song or whatever, right? Like they're just kind of floating there. And so with my process is like, I'll just pick up a guitar. I always just kind of practicing messing around, never with an intention to write it. It's when I just kind of stumble into, a couple of chords that like I'm like, oh, that's a cool riff. The riff I like to imagine kind of goes into the filing cabinet in my brain, and it kind of finds its match, and then those two things kind of interplay, and it ends up, with sort of the final product. But I never let sort of like I try not to go in with like any type of idea. Whenever I try to do that or write a specific song or hit on a specific theme, it ends up never quite working. And so like for me, I always kind of like to think of it as like this is the most authentic way that these things come out. So like I never set out to write a particular record, it just
Comes out. It's
yeah,
genuine,
that's
right?
where
It's
we ended up.
it's organic. It sounds like, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, the fifth song, "Kill Your Ego, Not Yourself."
Yeah, so that one was really about my time in politics. I ran for Congress in 2020, ended up staying in that world for a while, and I know that in this day and age, everybody wants to have like a little political hero, and they hold these folks up, and they're fucking human. It doesn't matter who they are. It's not what you're being sold. Um, and I went into this world because, like, I wanted to make the changes in the things that I found were unjust in the world, right? So I wasn't looking for a career. I wasn't one of those people that's just going to sit on the internet all day, just like spotting hot takes and then not doing anything about it. And it was sort of put the money where your mouth is moment in my life. But like, it's really easy to lose track of yourself in that world. You're trying to get people support, you're trying to get people support for your ideas or whatever the hell you're trying to do, and along the way there's all these different interests, and there is a lot of shadiness. It is what it is. And so kill your ego, not yourself really is about not losing yourself, whether, for me obviously it was politics, but for whatever it is, right? It's so easy to let ego get in the way of when you're trying to accomplish something good, to be the way that you want other people to see you, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Everybody says that nobody cares what they think about them, but that's a lie. And it's really easy to lose yourself to that. And then, that even the people closest to you have a knife out for you, like, and I stress that in the song, you do face betrayal in that world. And you kind of have to find a way to stay true to yourself and remember why you're doing what it is you're doing. And for me, it was because I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a change, and I didn't want to get caught up in sort of the games and sort of the intrigue and the a lot of the backstabbing that happens in that world. And it was a reflection on all of that. And to really always just kind of keep your guard up, stay true to yourself, and watch your back.
Awesome. Okay, great. Sixth song, "Hate Season."
Hate season, yeah, which also ends up being the name of the record. Whether it's politics, whether it's scenes in music or whatever, there's always a lot of hate. There's always the people that they want to be your friend and want to get close to you, and when they no longer need you, or you no longer serve their purposes, or you fall off for a little bit, all of a sudden, you're gone, and the knives come out, and the rumor mill, and all of that bullshit. So, that's probably one of the least heavy songs on the record in terms of topic, but it goes pretty hard, I like to think, musically, and it really is just kind of a middle finger to, again, to all those people in whatever scene or world you live in that are faking out to just kind of use you along the way until you're no longer of any value to them.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, seven, "Chaser."
Ugh. So yeah, Chaser. We live in this day and age where I don't think you can turn on your phone or go to any type of social media or anything without what we were talking about earlier. Those sort of hot takes and people with all these political opinions that are just sort of sitting on their ass and doing nothing about it. Um, so while that topic isn't necessarily new in the world, I think that we're living at a time and place where things are getting progressively worse. The hot takes are fantastic and coming left and right, but the action is nowhere to be seen. And it, this isn't just about like go vote or any of that, but like we're past all of that shit, right? It's just that like in our own communities, in our own neighborhoods, in our own families, there's the effect of what's happening is prevalent, and we're just kind of sitting on our hands and just constantly talk, 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 but we're not doing anything to improve it. And it's like, look, to not make it super hot topicy, like let's just say like homelessness. People have like all these ideas around what we can do, but well, what are you volunteering? Are you doing anything to provide help to support services? Like, what are the things that we can be doing? So Chaser really is so like these folks that are always online or in whatever little space that they're in, looking for that clout and approval of having like some great idea or some hot take on a situation, but not actually lifting a finger or organizing or doing anything to make a goddamn difference. And like, we're
Mhm.
living in a time and place where it's like, I just can't deal with it anymore. I can't deal with
Yeah.
hearing people's ideas and not hearing what their plan is to actually,
Hmm.
make a difference.
Right, right. Some music with this one. The music with this one. Like, what was the feel for this one that you feel with this one?
Yeah, so like so I started the intro, which is just kind of like sort of these ring out notes that we did, just started really dark and ominous, and that automatically brought up that feeling like
Yeah,
inside of me. Like I don't know how to explain it, but like hearing those sort of drawn out, like sort of ominous tones, like it made the connection for me, and then it just becomes sort of this pissed off banger that just kind of rushes through for the remainder of the song, and it really yeah, I channeled all of that rage and sort of like anger at the inaction into the music that way.
next one, Anadonia. Am I saying that one right?
Yeah, anhedonia. So that again, going back to the being mentally ill, like it got to the point the depression got so bad at one point where there was a good period of time, probably a year, of just not being able to feel anything, like
Mm,
at all, like not angry, not joy, not like and it was probably the darkest moment in my life where I'm going, am I going to ever make it out of this? Like, is this what the rest of my life is going to feel like? Where I can not feel anything at all. And it's that's scarier than just being super depressed or anything because like it's a
yeah,
fucking
sure.
vacuum. You can't access anything. And so both musically and lyrically, just really tried my best to try to capture that sensation and translate it into something that folks can hear, kind of what it sounds like. There's a part in that song that kind of drops off and it's just sort of this like echoey sort of thing. And the idea behind it, is what we told Brian when we were recording it. It's like, what we really want to capture is just kind of like floating through fucking empty space, like whatever we
Mm,
can do to capture that sonically, because like, this is kind of what this sensation is like. So yeah,
yeah,
not
and
very
for
upbeat,
me,
but
no, yeah, and it must capture, like you said, that moment or that feeling or that you were feeling at that time, and you put that on the record, which is
Mhm.
always obviously very helpful in terms of as you're moving through all these kind of things, which is great, right? Sounds very personal stuff here, man. Obviously, right? Ninth song, Kintsugi, my
Yeah, Kintsugi. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I was just talking to my wife before I jumped on here, and we were realizing like next month we will have been quote unquote dating for 22 years. Um, but we've been married for how long is that? 19 years now, almost. I always get in trouble for getting this wrong. But anyway, the moral of the story is, like in that time, you end up dropping the ball. You fuck up along the way, and you don't make it as long as we have without one being able to acknowledge that, and two, finding a way to put sort of the pieces together, and both, in a relationship, but also for myself in ways that I've sort of fallen apart. And so, for the nerds out there, kintsugi's like the Japanese art of like putting together broken pottery with like gold filling and all that, right? So that it sort of highlights where those breaks happen, and you sort of you don't throw it all away, you build it back up. And so that's really what that song is about, putting the pieces back together in either yourself or in a relationship, and being able to sort of celebrate the fixes.
Cool, awesome. 10th song, Suicidal Babies.
Yeah, the mirror side of that is also, sometimes you're in a situation, whether it's a relationship or a friendship or wherever, where no matter how hard you try to be seen when you're in a tough spot, you can kind of fall into the world of invisibility and the struggles with that. So, suicidal babies really is it's an exploration of that, right? Of wanting to be seen and of wanting to be heard. what it feels like when you think that that's not actually happening. So
Now, did you said it's like almost a mirror of like of the last song. I mean, was that
mhm.
intentional to make this song after it? Like just because of the theme of the lyrics, or just that's the way it fell?
No, it just kind of ended up falling that way. It was just a funny coincidence, but yeah, they're related in that sense.
Yeah. Well, okay. Turn it up.
Yeah, that one was just that's a fun one. That was just you know, being able to celebrate that we came back. And there was a time where I didn't know. When we originally went on hiatus, it was only supposed to be for like a year while I did the congressional run, and we were going to pick things up. And then one year turned to two, and then next thing we know, we had been off for like 4 years or almost 5 years at that point. So Turn It Up was just like just being so fucking happy to be able to do Scarboro again, being so happy to be working on new music again, and wanting to not take it for granted, right? Like it really is an appreciation of what we do, like whether anyone ever listens to us ever again, or we become big or small, it doesn't fucking matter. It was just that like the writing process, being able to do this is just such a lifesaver. So Turn It Up is just a really fun celebration of just being
Cool.
grateful to be able to do music.
Sounds like would translate live well, right? Like something where
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
yeah, like a sing along song live. Like I'm getting the sense of that one. 10,000 miles. Two more songs. This is the 12th one.
Yes, that one's a short and simple one. It's probably the lyrically least complicated song in the record, and it really is just, I know we've talked a lot about like all these struggles and shit throughout this conversation, and it's really about appreciating them. If I had to
Yeah.
do it all over again, like I wouldn't change a thing because like, I'm better off for all of the shit that I've gone through the past however many years.
All right. Awesome. Last song, Got Soul.
Yeah, that one is Jack's baby. And it's really another one of like really finding oneself, his sort of reclamation after going through some tough personal challenges, and realizing at the end of it, like that he still has a soul in him. And I think that like that was one of my favorite songs on the record, even though I didn't write it. It's probably my favorite song on the record because it like
Mhm.
it's just so emotional and raw and honest. So yeah.
Cool. So yeah, so we went through it, man. It sounds like it doesn't sound. I mean, it just I have the lyrics, I'm looking at them, and just even the way you've been so insightful in terms of talking about your lyrics, which I think are so important. Like, I mean, I think it's great that when people hear this, they get to hear it's obviously great music. It's fast, it's catchy, it's melodic. Uh, but there's a lot of meaning behind the lyrics that you have, right? And it's a very, very personal record too, And I think you said that even when you were talking about a few of those songs throughout that, which I think will make Hate Season even more excited for people to hear, just based on obviously the personal piece and the touch that you're putting within the lyrics for every one of these songs. And it sounds like just from hearing you, like you guys probably gonna have more stuff coming even after this. Like I know it's like, all right, let's just get through this record first, Chris. But sounds like you have a lot. One thing I did want to ask you is like I asked with one of the questions, how'd you go about the album track list in terms of okay, we're opening up with Midnight Special, that's for sure. We're definitely ending with Got Soul. So how did that come about? When you were coming to like, did you know Midnight Special was opening the record when you were writing, or this is when you were okay, we're demoing it, we're recording it, you kind of changed where you were going with in terms of the track list?
Yeah, no, definitely. The track list really comes to life in this in the studio because it's like, the way that we sort of go process wise, like it'll start with like an acoustic demo, on a
Yeah.
phone, and then it kind of all comes. Then we have like sort of the what we record on the phone in the practice studio, and then what we ended up in the studio, and like with each iteration it just kind of takes on a different life and a different energy. So I think that once we had like the initial tracking done on this one, for Midnight Special Got Soul definitely was very obvious to us, like the way that Midnight Special starts and the way that Got Soul ended. Those were sort of the bookends, and that kind of inspired the rest. And like we went back and forth for a good month, just trying to really or land on what the flow was going to be, because that's also important for us. Like we really like to think about what's this like for the listener. And I know in this day and age, a lot of people don't listen to records back to forward, but like we do. So
I
we're
do
like,
too. I do. Yeah, it's like it's a story,
yes,
and you got a story with
yes,
your lyrics. So yeah,
so between those two things, it's just kind of like how do we tell the story of the record and at the same time kind of like take the listener through to sound lame about it, like an auditory fucking journey with it,
Cool.
and
No,
be
that's
able to
awesome.
ride with it. The
What
vibes matter.
no, no, it's awesome. Well, another thing too, does the thought of eventually, all right, we're putting this on vinyl.
Mhm.
Um, do you think of, okay, this song would work well as the seventh song because that'll probably be side B of the vinyl, or like how did you look at that stuff? Or to
Yeah, I
start
mean,
with
well,
the second side
we're,
of the vinyl?
we luck out that even though we have a lot of songs, they're all so short that we got to sort of decide that, and but like so like for us, like Anhedonia very much clearly was the start of side B, right? Because like this record will flow, and hopefully folks get this when they hear it. It's really super, aggressive, and it has more of sort of that 80s hardcore punk sound to it, for like the first half. And then, I don't know how else to explain it. It just kind of gets a little weird and a little bit more accessible in the second half. But like, not only did that represent like our real life journey, we thought it did a really good job of like doing that sonically as well. So we definitely did do a process of going like, what is our side A and our side B when we were putting it together.
Awesome. Now, because we talked, obviously, I talked about how I described what I hear from your style, the punk style, which is so in your face and great, but catchy and melodic, all at the same time. For this record, and people at this point will hear singles, a couple of singles at that point in time, but you same thing, but with just Scarborough of 2026 kind of thing. Like, what was was that planned when you were writing it, or it just came out to what came out in terms of what you were writing?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. Because like, I don't think about what is this song going to sound like when I'm writing it necessarily, or like, or just doing the sort of the guitar part skeletons of it. I like to just capture what it is. It is. But at the same time, you know, we didn't want to just rehash the same shit we've done over and over again. So the core spirit of that is in there. But like, for what we're trying to do, like it's been hard because we've always felt kind of like, oh, like do we need to do like does everything always have to sound like a certain way? Because like this is kind of what we're kind of seen as or whatever. And this time around, it was like, you know what? Like we just want to do what we want to do. We want to kind of push the envelope about what we're capable with without losing our soul. We're not going to get like necessarily like super weird. It's been like prog rock, but at the same time, like we did want to experiment a little bit more. We did it, put in a lot more effort in making the songs more dynamic and bringing in like weird instruments that we haven't used before necessarily in the recording process. So that's kind of thing. It's just like we just want to just do something authentic and fun, and also push the envelope in terms of what we think we can do as like musicians.
Awesome. That's awesome. So, what now? Because you guys have played, I know you played a New Year's show. You got some shows coming up that you will have played already by the time this comes out. Have
Mhm.
you played these songs live, the new ones?
Yeah, like we've been kind of honing the set. Like we're headed to California in February, um, so that's also why I'm a little bit stressed out because we're like in the final leg of finalizing that tour. So yeah, we've been doing the songs live, and now just kind of finalizing what the set list is going to look like for record release, and moving forward because we still bring in a lot of the old stuff, but we've been playing a ton of the new stuff just because it's also like we love the fucking record. Like it's weird. Like normally you record it, you're so tired of listening to the
Yeah.
same thing over and over again, but for whatever reason, like it keeps us amped. So yeah.
Yeah, you're excited for it. So look, obviously, because your set list, you've been working on that now in terms of structuring into the new, putting in the new songs. Like, look, obviously, you have to play Scarborough. You're playing Downward Spiral. Like those songs are going to be thrown in, right? But putting in, not throwing in there, putting them in there. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it sounds like just from the way you were talking, all 13 tracks, you're going to be playing all 13 tracks. I don't know it all at one time, but it sounds like this record you're super proud of. Lyrics are personal, right? You're back. You're excited about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, like you're going to be playing all these songs off this album one way or another, the
Yeah.
way you're playing, correct? Right?
Yeah, like right now, what we're debating is like, which of the old ones do we throw in there? Because like right now, what we've been doing, I think we're playing like 16 songs live, and most of a good chunk of them are the new ones, and then like maybe like five of the older ones, and we still clock that in at 27 minutes right now. We keep it under a half hour, so it's like like the goal is let's see if we can get all 13 in the new set, and then like see which one of the old ones we dust off to throw in there and
Cool.
still keep it within reason.
Yeah, that's the thing too. It's like you're playing the new songs is it's almost like testing them out live too, how they go, right? Like you see how they go and how they go over. So that which will be fun. Do you look at ever um streams of songs? Like you're going out to California, you at this point when this comes out, you'll be out there like, oh, like Archangels is really streaming out in San Diego. Like, do you look at this random thing there, but do you ever look at that stuff or you just go feel?
Yeah, no, I think we just kind of go by feel. Like it was funny because we had played Lancaster not long ago, or York rather, in Pennsylvania, and like a good buddy of mine who plays in Divided Heaven was out there, and he's like, that's a really smooth move that you guys don't have liminal space anywhere in your set list, even though you just released it. And like, yeah, I know it's kind of boneheaded. I know that like, a lot of folks like dissect their streams and try to find like the perfect city to play and all that stuff. And yeah, look, we look every once in a while, but we don't let metrics dictate what we do. Like for us, I think it's more important to be authentic and kind of act like you sort of do the book authentically and do whatever we want to do where we want to go and not sort of be sort of led by the nose by the numbers all the time, which unfortunately has taken over the mentality of the scene in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting too. You look at like, especially like older bands I would see back in the '90s, and like it's certain songs have just have so many streams, and you're just like, I don't remember that song being one of their songs live, kind of thing. It just gets like caught in an
Yeah.
algorithm, and then just takes off, which is cool, But that happens, I think, sometimes. This a lot of good with Spotify, but there's a lot of bad with it at the same time with it. So, album comes out Hate Season April 17th. You're gonna have some singles. What are the future? What are the plans? What you're looking at the spring and on for the band moving forward? You said doing this full time, so I'm sure there's the shows, tours, with some stuff coming up for Scarborough.
Yeah, so once the record comes out, the plan is we're looking into doing an East Coast run, and then beyond that, like we've been pretty good about trying to do weekenders every month or every other month. Working the region and all that, and then seeing sort of where hopefully be able to hit up some of the festivals over this summer, and then continue touring on the record within our means after that, because like it is what we're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like going to be have a busy year, right? Like a lot of stuff coming up in terms of promoting the album, which would be great. Where do
Yeah.
you see put a time capsule in? Where do you see? Because we kind of got almost the last 5 years of from COVID on to now in terms of you guys writing the new album and with getting involved with Congress, running for Congress and all. Where do you see the band for the next 5 years from now? You pull 5 years ahead from now. What do you guys see Scarborough doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think that that's what we're trying to figure out. I mean, obviously, we want to be able to do more national touring and all of that stuff, but like we gotta see what this record does, and I'll be just dead ass about it. It's just that like, the world has changed, the industry has changed, people's interest in taste change. Like one way or another, we'll still be playing, whether we're just playing at, some fucking cafe for free or some of those bigger stages that we'd love to be gracing, only time and people will tell. But yeah, that's sort of where our trajectory is just trying to, we're going to keep hustling. We keep trying to reach as many people as possible, but we can't control for that.
Right.
We just put
Right.
it into
All you can
work.
do is go out and play and just do your thing,
Exactly.
and then that's it. And keep putting out great music that you guys are doing. So,
Uh,
so now I have a bunch of questions. First thing that comes to mind in terms of some of the questions. So the first one I'll jump with is: what are your top three albums of all time, or just three albums that you find very most
oh
influential to you?
man.
It doesn't
Shit.
have to just be like punk, hardcore. It could be anything.
Yeah, no, no, no. Like that's a great question. Because like, my depending on when you ask me that question, I'll always have different answers probably. So top three most influential album. I mean, like, look, I'd be lying if I didn't say Dookie because I was like a 13-year-old kid.
Great record.
If
Yeah.
and if I didn't listen to that record, it would have never opened the door to all the old school shit that I love, and like that was sort of my entry point. Second one, not punk rock at all, would be Ride the Lightning, because that's
Another good
when
one. Mhm.
as a little kid, I transferred over from listening to New York freestyle into rock music. And then this is a random one is AFI's very proud of you. I
Okay.
because like I don't know, like we had this like period where like around when the Hangover came up, and it was just like, oh, like it's a hardcore band, and I was like, well, oh, that was weird. I always thought we were just kind of a punk band. And it's always wrestled with that thing, and I realized it's like I grew up listening to a lot of like West Coast hardcore music in the '90s and '80s New York hardcore punk, and that's sort of where like Scarboro ended up being. It's just sort of this weird mesh between like that melodic '90s like West Coast punk rock and hardcore and '80s New York hardcore. Anyway, sorry, that was a random tangent. Go on.
No, not at all. It's obviously it's three different records, complete different sounds, but obviously shaped who you are. And there's great records.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's great records. Favorite show you've ever played?
Favorite show we've ever played? Easily Kill Your Idols in 2018. Because do I have time to tell you a quick backstory on that one?
Go ahead, yeah.
Um, so we had gone like I went with a buddy of mine to see Negative Approach, and shit, now the name of the band is blanking on me, but it was Todd Youth's band before Fireburn that he was also playing with John Joseph at the time. It doesn't matter. Anyway, hanging out outside, like Todd Youth had walked by. This was like right after the Hangover came up, and he turned around. He's like, "Hey, it's Scarborough, right?" And I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like, who, like, like I was just like totally surprised. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I really loved your record. Hope we could do something together sometime." And I was just like, "Oh sure," he's being nice or whatever. Then a few months later, I got an email from him and Vinny Value. They were like, "Oh, like Firebird, we're playing with Kill Your Idols. Like, we'd love to have you guys open up." And so, like, it was like a fucking dream come true. And like, that was just like one of the greatest shows that we ever got to play. It was like Berthold City, Fireburn, Eight, Kill Your Idols, and it was just, yeah, I don't know. It was just, we were
Show.
just kids at a candy store, kids at a candy store.
Yeah, good show. Good show. And for sure it was. It was the first one that came to your mind when I asked you that.
Yeah.
Um, so this might be tough for you, unless it comes right out to you, because it sounds like all 13 of these new songs are, but a song you wrote you're most proud of. It could be it could be musically, the lyrical content, whatever you could be both.
Yeah.
Just like we hit like this one, you're like, I feel good about this one. I nailed this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be Sin Futuro because it was, yeah, I don't know. One, I didn't trust my own decision to do a bilingual song, but it's also the one where we like I was open to bringing in more elements that weren't strictly something that you would consider Scarborough like, and
Mhm.
that it worked, and it's like it's one of my favorite songs personally. I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm really glad we did that. I'm really proud of that one.
Your favorite tour or a weekender that you've done?
So when we did the Hangover tour, that was definitely my favorite. We just got to have so much fun on that tour. Like we played a huge show in Indiana. It's like 300 people. It's probably one of the biggest shows we've ever played. So that one definitely, and it's also the first time we ever saw our name on a fucking marquee. So that was pretty dope.
Cool. So I wonder if you just mentioned it, but I'll ask anyway. Favorite scene outside of New York?
Favorite season outside of New York. Ooh. I mean, for us, it definitely is in Pennsylvania, and I'm gonna split that between New York and Philly because like Philly just has like that, like right now, like you have been around New York, you know the city's changed. They're Philly to me still has a little bit of that old New York feel that we've lost. And then New York is just like, we've played there so many times, and it's just like there's always young people at those shows, like and you don't get to see that much these days. So I think that's favorite scene outside of New York.
Cool. Favorite club to play?
Ooh, we're gonna get ourselves blacklisted. Um, I don't know. That's a tough one. Like lately, like I think between Lucky 13 and Gold Towns here in New York have been my favorite to play, just because like the sound is so great. There's always like a built-in crowd, and we've had such a fun time playing there. But that is a hard question to answer.
Cool. So I just added this. I wanted to actually, what made you choose the first single off this album? Like, what was it? Was it the whole band, the three of you came up with it, or you kind of just after hearing it, that's the song that you were like, this is the one we want to put out as the first single. That kind of demonstrates what we're taught, what we're doing on this record.
Sorry for the single or the first song on the record.
First single. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I think we all agreed that like this was it. I think it's timely. We love the sounds on it, and I think it comes out the gate swinging. right out the bat, and which we wanted to make sure that like it was clear when we came back with this new record.
Awesome. It's a favorite show that you attended last year.
I saw Turnstile down in Philly with Mannequin Pussy and Speed, so that one's
Good show.
the top of my list for 25.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an
Yeah.
outdoor. Fuck it, it was dope. It was dope. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Last one here, man. A band that you like or an artist that may surprise people.
I mean, I kind of mentioned them already, but it's Bad Bunny has won me over. I was late to the game, but it's definitely won me over.
Awesome. Awesome. Sure. Thanks so much, man. It's an awesome conversation about the record. Psyched for it to come out. Psyched to see you guys. There's going to be obviously a lot going on into the summer and into the spring, summer, and into the winter. Obviously, you guys have a lot planned here. Anything you want to end with before we sign off here?
No, thanks so much for having me here, and then I really hope that by the time the record comes out, like folks have enjoyed the singles, and that it's gonna be successful because we worked really hard on this one, and it means a lot to us.
Awesome. Yeah, it's gonna be great. That'd be great. Sure. Thanks so much. I'm just gonna sign us off, hang here, and then we'll talk when I get off. Okay, when I'm done.
Cool.
Thank you for listening to the What Lies Ahead podcast, which is available on all streaming platforms. Go ahead and save the What Lies Ahead podcast playlist on Spotify that features all bands that were on the show. For more information on future episodes, you can go to my Instagram account and follow at What Lies Ahead _podcast, and on Facebook by searching What Lies Ahead podcast. See you on the next episode.